we have Pastor Craig Corkhill. Look, I know
Martin's
we've
gone.
had a couple this morning. Craig Corkhill from Narara Bats in here, who's been talking off air just now about the churches coming together on the coast. That's really exciting stuff. We've also got, of course, our station manager in here, Rick. Great to have you here too.
I'm here
Rick.
too. You're only saying that because I just brought you a melting moment.
Yep, and I want more. Yeah, I thought that was just like the first one, first part of breakfast.
That was the entree.
Yes, wow.
Breakfast of Champions right there.
Absolutely.
So, Craig, we're talking about being the change, and my understanding always has been, as salt and light, the church should actually be changing our society. We're actually be preserving the salt and light, illuminating, so all those sort of things. How do you see in this era of church history, where there's been a lot of rubbish and we're dealing with it and hopefully leaving that behind and moving forward, trying to re-establish trust and all that sort of stuff, how can the church, not a particular congregation, but the church in whole, be the change in our community?
Yeah, it's a great question, Rick. I guess as I look at it, to take up your illustration of salt and light, Jesus says, if salt loses its saltiness, what's the point? What's the point?
It's just grit.
That's right, it's just grit, and you don't put a lamp under a bushel and that sort of stuff. You don't hide the light. And it would seem to me that part of our more recent and perhaps longer term history where we haven't got things right and have caused harm has been that we haven't effectively discipled people. Jesus in the Great Commission talks about teach them to obey everything I've commanded you. And that's kind of foundational to this whole discipleship movement. And I think we've focused so much on other stuff and been distracted by other things that we've lost sight of the basics, the foundational thing of, hey, Jesus called us to make disciples of Him. And discipleship, it's one of those subversive movements, if you want to call it that. It's a subversive movement that is life on life. It's highly relational, and it takes time. Here's a difference. It's a difference between eating a fast food meal and a slow cooked meal. You ever had a slow cooked meal, like in a slow, and you come into the home, if the slow cooker's been on all day, and you just know there's something good on, and it's nourishing and it's good for you, and it is phenomenal. And then you got the fast food thing, and we kind of ding bang in out, pay at the next counter sort of thing. And I think it's a bit like that with churches, that we've been fast food mindset for a while now, and I'm not sure we've actually got the whole notion of effectively making disciples. That it takes time, it's high relationship, but it brings about immense change. And one of the things I love about Rhema is you guys are complementing discipleship that's happening in homes, that's happening in local congregations, that sort of stuff. I mean, you were just saying off air, Rick, a whole lot of the great teaching ministries that you guys are running here. Do you want to remind listeners of that?
Running through it, like people like Michael Youssef, Derek Prince, Joyce Meyer, Greg Laurie, Chuck Swindoll, your family life programs, those sort of things.
That excites me, because listeners have access to some world-class preaching. To continue the journey of discipleship. Again, a friend of mine was telling me recently, she was just driving along listening to a message, only yesterday it was, and just saying how impacting it was for her, and it was just confirming a whole lot of stuff God's been saying in her own life, and that complements the life-on-life journey of discipleship that we're seeing, with the goal being not just that, as I said earlier, not just that I'm a reservoir of all that great teaching and all that great blessing and that growth, but I'm actually a conduit, I'm a river of that into the lives of others, because the goal isn't just to make disciples who get warm and fuzzies. The goal is to make disciples who then make disciples. It's actually a multiplication movement, rather than just it's all about me in our individualistic society.
Just thinking, do you think our focus over the years has been too much on salvation and not on discipleship and growth?
Yeah, that's a really interesting question. For me, I've said to the congregation at Narara many times that Jesus didn't call us to make converts. He called us to make, and then I believe a pause, and everybody says disciples.
Yeah, we all know it.
And it's interesting to I don't know how deep I'll go theologically here. If you look at the 12 disciples, you go, when were they actually, in inverted commas, Christians? And they're called disciple right from the get-go, right from when they're dropping nets and leaving tax collecting booths. They're called disciples, and it's probably not until Acts 2 when the Holy Spirit comes you might call them Christian, if you want to call them that, then when there's regeneration. I look at that and I go, okay, with my friends in the community who don't know Jesus yet, I am discipling them. Now, evangelism is part of discipleship. I'm actually discipling them. They're not followers of Jesus yet, but they're starting to get inquisitive now about who this Jesus is. And I'm not convinced that the end game is just, well, we've got them over the line, we've got them
another
to pray.
notch in the barrel.
Yeah, we've got them to pray the prayer and that sort of stuff, or to come forward at the meeting. The goal is actually to make multiplying disciples of Jesus, and that's a far grander vision, and I believe actually a far more important vision, because we're not called to make converts, we're called to make disciples, and there's a very big difference between the two.
Yeah, I think we often throw people in the deep end. We say, hey, you're saved, you've now, now go and work it out yourself.
Go and work it out yourself, that's right.
We couldn't do that. Craig, I know you love research and stats and all that sort of stuff. It's one of your areas.
Bit of a nerd. That's what you're saying, isn't it?
No. I love them too. So you're on my wavelength. McCrindle Research, fantastic company. They do some really good stuff, and they've the analysis they've done to actually measure, because we've always said Christian radio is good for you.
Yeah.
But it's actually interesting, some of the stats they've got out of research of over 3,500 people, which is a pretty good sample size.
It's a good sample size.
That's pretty statistically significant. They actually say that 77% of the listeners, these listeners to Christian radio, they say that listening to Christian station had a massive or significant benefit. So massive or significant, not just a little bit, on benefit on their lives. Interesting, 60% said it also benefited their family.
Yeah, that's fascinating. Isn't
and 65 said it benefited their community. So they're not just saying it's really good for me to listen, for me. Somehow that listening actually improves my family and my community.
Effect. Yeah.
And I mean, I think that's part of the whole thing here with being the change. Being the change starts with us.
Yep.
We can look around and look at all the problems in the world and all the things that have been done wrong and all the things that aren't quite right. The start to changing that is starting by changing us.
That's right. Yeah, and as you rightly say, Rick, the changing us stuff has a flow-on effect into all of our key relationships. So, I look at that number, 77% of the listeners saying that listening to the Christian radio station had a massive or significant benefit, and I go, it doesn't surprise me then that there would be a flow-on effect within their key relational world, within their family, within their community. Whilst McCrindle didn't research it, I would hazard a guess that even within workplaces there is a palpable change that happens when people are increasingly reflecting Jesus, when they're being encouraged and spurred on and challenged through Christian radio. It has a multiplier effect, which is really wonderful.
I think we can very easily slip into a habit of once a week Christianity.
Yep.
We do our Sunday morning, we do our Sunday evening or whatever, and it's like, you don't just eat once a week.
That's right.
Because you're going to be pretty hungry by the end of the 7 days. But it's the same thing. We expect to feed ourselves spiritually one day a week, an hour a week maybe, and yet still be able to maintain our strong faith. It's just not going to work. 7-day input potentially through, and we're not saying radio is all the answers. You should be involved in home groups, you should be doing all that other stuff and serving in which other ways. But it's a part of the whole picture.
It is. In fact, some of my research that I was doing with my doctorate is identifying that Jesus' model for discipleship wasn't, as you say, an hour a week. His model for discipleship was being with him, and I think one of the benefits, one of the value adds of Christian radio is that it helps us, it focuses us to be with Jesus more than just that 1 hour a week. And you're exactly right, it's not the whole picture, it's not the silver bullet, but it is part of a life that's oriented around Jesus. That's far more than just a 1 hour a week thing. It's a life of being with Jesus and learning from him, becoming like him, and then engaging in his mission.
It's interesting because some of these other stats show things that listening to Christian radio has actually increased people's church attendance.
Yep.
Which you've got to be happy with. Bible reading and prayer.
Yeah.
And not coincidentally, it also believed it helped him improve the quality of the decision making. I think that's got a lot to do with the increased prayer, Bible reading, and church attendance.
That's right. Yeah. It's interesting. I was reading through those the stats from McCrindle, and I love it when people's attendance goes up at church, because love hanging out with other people, and that's wonderful. One of the numbers there that was really impacting me was the increase in the rate of people reading the scriptures.
Yeah.
There was a really large body of research done, the Revealed Spiritual Life Survey. It's 500,000 people globally now, and they found that the number one catalyst for personal spiritual practices is reading the scriptures. So for people to read the scriptures is incredibly catalytic for making them more and more like Jesus. And so if Christian radio is having a spin-off, a significant spin-off effect of getting people to open up the scriptures, open up the device to their Bible app, and actually read and reflect on scripture, that has a huge catalytic effect in their growth in their relationship with Jesus.
Must be why there's things in the Word about laying up this Word in your heart.
Indeed, writing this Word on your heart, and
putting on the doorpost.
Yeah, I've hidden your Word in my heart that I might not.
There must be some significance to that.
I think the Bible writers knew what they were talking about.
They weren't just saying, read my book.
That's right. Yeah.
The average radio listener on a Christian station in Australia as well is that they listen for longer periods of time than the average commercial radio listener.
Yeah.
It's interesting, isn't it? We've got Rick and Craig Corkhill in the studio right now. And
of course, you can also come in the studio the next 3 days, like right through today till 6 o'clock and 8 till 9. Saturday, Sunday, we'll have the doors open. Come in, have a studio tour, meet some of the people.
Don't take the melting moments.
We'll find something for you to eat. We'll keep Mick away from it and make sure he shares. Make sure he shares. Sharing is caring, Mick.
Like
remember
that.
Mine. That's right. So, Craig, just again want to thank you so much for your time to come in. As I said with Martin, you pastors are busy people. You've always got more on your plate than you know how to deal with. But you manage and you find time to come in and take part in what we're doing here this weekend. Awesome. Any final words of encouragement, inspiration, thoughts for the coast?
Yeah, I guess with the theme this year being Be the Change, my encouragement to listeners is don't underestimate the change that can happen in your life and that God can precipitate through you in your daily interactions with people. In the regular humdrum day-to-day stuff, the driving the kids to school, the picking them up, the making the meal, the talking with the neighbour, the blessing another family, whatever it might be, the smallest thing, the largest thing is all part of being the change. And I think sometimes we crave for those mountaintop experiences, and they're wonderful when they happen, or those amazing life-changing stories where you say only a few words and the person instantly becomes a follower of Christ, and we go, oh wow, it's phenomenal. But the small faithfulness, as Eugene Peterson talks about, the long obedience in the same direction, the faithfulness, that I think is all about being the change. I guess to close, I remember my dad, who passed away a couple of years ago now. He was a really godly, faithful man. My most enduring memory of my father was every morning I'd get up and I'd head off to the bathroom to get ready for school and all that sort of stuff, and I'd look down the hallway and I'd see my dad on his knees in prayer. Now, he'd already been out for a run that morning. He was an avid runner, loved jogging. He'd already been reading the scriptures and journaling there, and at that point each morning at 6 a.m. he'd be on his knees in prayer.
Wow.
And I'm not sure he ever knew at the time the impact that had on me every morning, seeing my dad on his knees in prayer. Dad was part of the change.
Yeah.
And he was part of the change as he interceded, but he was also part of the change as his young son, me, would see him on his knees each morning. Yeah. And it's the small things, it's the big things that's involved with being the change. And even with the appeal that we've got going on at Rhema here at the moment, some people might go, yes, I can contribute large amounts, and that's wonderful if you're able to do that. And some people, it might be a bit like, the story with Jesus with the widow's mite. It might be a small amount. I go, that's okay.
Yeah.
That's okay.
Yeah.
Be the change. Be part of the change. Be part of this movement of change that God is bringing about in and through you.
And I believe part of that being the change, even if it's a small gift, it changes you.
It does. It does.
You giving, that act of faith of giving changes you.
Yeah, we talk a fair bit about that at Narara Valley Baptist Church. We will say that giving is an expression of worship, it's an expression of an obedience, but what it also does, it's a spiritual practice that frees me from consumerism, materialism, and the idea that it's all about me.
Yeah.
And there is something freeing, and it sounds bizarre, there is something freeing about giving. It's not just about who you are giving to, it's about what God does in your life as a disciple of Jesus.
I want to just encourage you, a little challenge to be the change in a really small way, because this is something I've been trying to do. Next time you go and get a cup of coffee from someone, when the person behind the counter hands you the coffee, actually get eye contact with them and say thank you.
Yeah, yep.
Because you see some people and they just grab the cup and run out the door. They're sort of, it's like, oh, okay. But take the effort and the time to give back to that person. Acknowledge that they're actually a person.
That's right.
And they've actually done something nice for you there. They've made you a really nice brew. Just look at them and say, thanks for that.
I couldn't agree
and actually
more.
mean it.
Yeah, it's funny. My wife Carol and I will go out for dinner and that sort of stuff. And if I've had a particularly great meal, one of the things that I do, and Carolyn's far more introverted than I am, but I go, hey, I'll say to the waiter or the waitress, hey, either A, can you communicate to the chef just what a brilliant meal that is, or sometimes I've actually had the gall to stick my head backstage of the restaurant and call out the chef and say, mate, that was just phenomenal. I had the whatever it was, and that was awesome. And you see their eyes light up,
don't they?
Just
they really
light
do.
Up. They go, oh, thank you, because normally they just get the thing, oh, that wasn't very nice, and just get sent back because the steak was either too well done or not well done enough. But their eyes will light up, make a person's night.
It's such a simple thing.
It is.
Then it has a huge impact. So do that. Be the change in your coffee shop.
Wow, that session really spoke to me. I promise I won't have all the melting moments. I'll let other people have a melting moment.
That's called
well.
conviction of the Holy Spirit,
That's
mate.
it right there. Amen. Testify.
Got me. Hey, you're on 94.9 this morning, and we're really appreciating all of the help that people have been giving us. It's $2,580 on the board. That's the tally at the moment. And we'd love to increase that over the next couple of hours. It'd be really, really cool. 2 FEBC radios have been given. And, you can easily give just 4367 4042. You can give us a call. You can jump online, www.rhema.cc, or come in and meet all the people in the studio. You've got to be quick. Craig Corkhill will only be here for a little bit longer, but
you can come talk to me on Sunday at church.
There you go. He's one of those.
It was a free ad.
Free ad, right?
Baptist Church. What time? No,
that's right. 9:30. Narara Valley Baptist Church.
Almost civilised.
Or 5 p.m.
What's the address?
It's 149 Narara Valley Drive, Narara.
He knew it. Very good.
There you go.
You bet.
The church with a roof.
The church with a roof. That's right.
Well, thank you so much for coming in this morning.